Morning everybody, it's Modern Refugee. Out here working in my garden a little bit today. I want to talk to you guys about a few things, show you a few things. Kind of want to say thank you to all my subscribers and welcome to all my new subscribers. The Alaska Prepper gave me a big shout out there yesterday, and I really appreciate it. I got a lot of guys and gals coming over from his channel to kind of check out my stuff, and I really appreciate it. I'm kind of taking a little look-see here in the garden today. My ground's starting to thaw out here a little bit, so as soon as that happens, there's some few things that I do. I kind of turn my ground over a little bit and kind of get things ready, because I normally plant here toward the end of April. This is a little bit early for my area. It's about 3 weeks early actually, but then I cover all my stuff up kind of with hot caps or cut milk jugs, which I'll show you guys how to make and how I go about doing that kind of stuff. So it's kind of a garden prep video here. But one other thing I want to show you, you can see I got a big old pile of potatoes back there on the ground. I make what's called a potato clamp, and what that is that's a hole in the ground that you line with straw, fill it with your potatoes, and then cover it back up with dirt, and you use that to kind of winter over your potatoes. Those potatoes back there I actually put in that clamp in Labor Day weekend last fall, so they've been in the ground for like 7 months, and they actually look pretty decent. It's kind of, my potato clamp video is kind of my most important video that I personally think that I've made, where people could get some information from. So if you get a chance, check that out. I'll put a link in the description for that. And I kind of want to say thank you to my parents who aren't with me anymore, but my parents and my grandparents are kind of the ones that have showed me a lot of this stuff. My mother and my grandmother spent countless hours out in the garden, and they showed me much, and I kind of wish their knowledge would be spread and still be out there. And that's kind of another reason for my videos. So anyway, I'm going to walk you through a few things here that I do with my gardening, and I hope you guys get some information out of it. I'll be coming back to you here. One thing that I want to mention is some hand tools. If you can only have 3 hand tools for the garden, these are the 3 that you want to have. You want to have a good shovel, you want to have a good rake, and you want to have a good hoe. You'd be surprised what you can do with just these 3 things. If you can, get them with a synthetic handle, because if you know, there's an SHTF or something like that, the synthetic handles are going to last a lot longer for you. And just because I know how to whittle a handle doesn't necessarily mean that I want to spend all day replacing handles. So for these garden tools here that are going to take a lot of abuse, and you're going to do a lot of turning soil and whatnot, you're going to appreciate having a synthetic handle. But anyway, I've turned a lot of ground with just a regular shovel, so I do have a small rototiller that I use too, but you can't depend on that if you can't get any gas or something like that, or something goes sideways. So I always practice turning soil by hand as well. It's a lot more labor intensive, but comes in handy. The other thing you want to have is a good pair of gloves, and probably a couple of pair, because when you're doing hand work in the garden, you're probably going to wear them things out pretty quickly. So you always want to have a few gloves around too. But I'm going to take you over here now, kind of show you where my potato clamp was. That's the hole where I had it. And then these are kind of my potatoes. Dried off a little bit here. I kind of rinsed some of the mud and stuff off of them. Some of them got a few cracks in them. I did have about, I'm gonna say maybe about a dozen rotten ones, but I didn't think that was too bad. There was still probably a good 15 pounds in this particular clamp. I dug this thing up twice during the winter, once when I made the video and one other time to take potatoes out of it. I originally had about 30 pounds in it, and kind of this is what's left. And I think that these potatoes kind of look fairly decent for being in the ground for 7 months with no refrigeration, no nothing, and they're still good to go to eat. So we're going to eat these potatoes. But this is also where I plant potatoes, so I'm going to kind of work all this stuff up. Kind of want to go over some of the organic material I got in the ground here too. This is my little pail here that I I make. I don't ever throw out these cans like a hominy or those big cans of Bush's baked beans or whatever. I keep these cans, punch a couple holes in them, put in a wire, and make a little pail out of them. These actually come in really handy in the garden. I use them for, you know, carrying water or picking stuff. So never throw out those big cans. Very, very useful. I use this here to kind of rinse potatoes off to kind of show you what they look like. They were a little bit muddy after being in the ground with the snow melt and stuff. So they, like I said, they got a little dirty, but they wintered over pretty decent. Like I said, I'm kind of impressed. We had 20 below temperatures for a few days, and that's pretty cold. That cold penetrates down into the ground quite far. But anyway, that's enough about that. One kind of organic material that I got a ton of is leaves. So I always throw a whole bunch of leaves on my garden, and I turn them under. You can either turn them under with a shovel, or you can use like a rototiller, however that you want to do it. And another thing that I always put in my garden is my wood ashes. Anybody's ever seen, turn here, see that a little bit? Anybody that's ever seen any of my videos know that I always got the wood stove going. And I take those wood stove, the ashes out of the wood stove, and I spread them on my garden because they actually have nutrients in them too. So anyway, that's kind of some of the organic material and stuff that I add here into my soil. Kind of back up here a little bit, show you a little bit more. And I always like putting that organic material and putting the ashes on top of the snow and having the snow go over top of it, and the snow kind of breaks everything down. It kind of freezes and thaws, and the stuff usually works right into the soil after I work it a time or two in the spring. And like I said, I usually start putting stuff in the ground about the 3rd week in April, give or take a week. And I start with the cold weather stuff. I start with potatoes, and I start with onions is usually the first 2 things that I plant because they're very cold weather hardy. But anyway, I'm going to turn all this ground. I'll maybe show you what it looks like when I'm all finished. Might even get the rototiller out here if it'll start for me, and do a little working. Also, one other thing I want to mention, when I dug my clamp up, I also had earthworms in it. I had night crawlers and stuff in it, so that's actually great. That means my soil is where it needs to be as far as organic material, because if you got earthworms in your soil, it means your plants are going to like it too. So that's just another thing you can keep in mind. But anyway, when I get going here on a few other things, I'm going to show you that stuff too. This is a big old ugly bush, and a lot of folks wonder, why would you want a big old ugly bush by your garden? Well, I kind of discovered something long ago, and I've been kind of doing it ever since. This big old ugly bush attracts a ton of birds, and there's always birds sitting in it, and there's always birds pooping on my garden when they're sitting in it. So that's kind of why I keep this bush, even though it takes some nutrients and it blocks a little bit of sunlight. I think it helps out as far as pest control, and it also helps out as far as the fertilizer that all the different birds come and spread for free onto my garden. Of course, it's not really for free. I do have a couple bird feeders around, and I feed birds all winter long, but I feel that it helps the soil. This particular spot right here is kind of my richest soil. I always grow the most vegetables in this spot right here. So just kind of wanted to show you that. Sometimes things like bushes and whatnot aren't necessarily bad for your garden. And like I said, the birds really help me out. I don't have any, usually any tomato worms, any potato bugs, anything like that, because I'm constantly doing stuff to keep birds around. They do a really good job. So keep that in mind when you're starting your gardens out. Some of the other animals that might be around that could actually help you, like birds or earthworms. Years ago, when I first started gardening, I kind of looked at the vegetables that we always bought, and this is kind of what I tell people who ask me about gardening, my friends here locally. Look at the main couple vegetables that you guys buy all the time and try to grow those, because it'll really help out. And for us at the time, it was onions, tomatoes, peppers, and cucumbers. So those were the first 4 things that I started growing. And every year since then, once I kind of got into it, for at least the last 7 or 8 years, I try to add one new thing every year that I grow, and add that kind of into my garden, what I'm growing. And this year I'm going to do strawberries. I grew strawberries when I was a kid. My parents grew strawberries, so I got a little bit of experience with it. I also watched quite a bit of a material on YouTube, and I looked up different things on the internet and stuff, and I noticed that a lot of strawberries, people grow strawberries in those strawberry pots. And when I came across these tiles, I said, you know what, these would be great for growing strawberries in. I'm going to try burying these in the ground at different depths, so the strawberry runners can hang over the side and the strawberries not touch the ground. So that's what I'm going to do with these guys here. I got a little over a dozen of these. I'm going to plant strawberries in these, and that's going to be my new crop for this year. Just kind of wanted to tell you guys that's kind of how I've grown my garden, from just a couple items over the years to what I grow now. But anyway, kind of take a look at what you guys always buy and kind of concentrate on maybe growing some of that stuff, because even if you can knock down your grocery bill a few percent, it still all adds up. That money can be better spent in other places. So anyway, just kind of wanted to show you guys this. That right there is a little baby earthworm, and that is exactly what you want to have in your garden. That means that you got good organic material in there, and you got fairly decent soil. So earthworms are kind of your friends. If you see these in a little patch of ground, you might want to think about working it up and planting yourself some vegetables in there. Just kind of want to show you what one of these little guys look like. One other thing that I kind of want to mention is start my own seeds. And I do start my own seeds in the house. This right here is some cabbage that I've already started. You can see there, they're coming up nicely for me. And this soil is actually soil that I went out in the woods and I kind of harvested and I sterilized, and I actually made a video on that. And I will I'll put a link down in the description to kind of, if you guys want to kind of know how to do that, it'll help you out a little bit. But anyway, I just use these kind of cake pans here that you would take to a potluck or whatever. And I normally wait and buy these after Christmas when they're clearancing them out, because they got kind of a Christmassy pattern on them. They'll clearance that stuff out fairly cheap. You can get a couple of years out of these pans. They you don't have to throw these out every year. You can save these and reuse them, and that's kind of what I do. I've been going more and more to start my own seeds in the last few years. As a gardener and kind of as a prepper, I think that it's best just to start my own seeds. That way if something happens, I can just go from scratch if I have to. But now if you want to go to the greenhouse and get sets, that's perfectly fine too. I don't have any issue with folks doing that as well. But I just kind of started my own seeds as kind of a thing I've been doing here in the last few years. Kind of save some of my seeds in the fall. If I got a really good crop of peppers or beans or something, I'm going to save that seed and see if I can propagate it. And I've had fairly decent luck with it. Another thing I want to mention about starting seeds in the house, I keep all my seeds after I plant them in these little trays. I'll put them in a nice warm sunny spot, so keeps them nice and warm, keeps the soil warm. That's kind of what the baby plants like that like. One other thing I'm going to mention is leave yourself some time. I always plant my seeds early in the house. That way if something happens with where my seeds don't germinate, I've got a little bit of time where I can correct that and I can replant. It's the same thing with planting stuff outside. I would rather plant things just a little bit on the early side and cover them up than I would plant them too late and something happens with the seeds and then it's too late in the season to get a crop out. So I'll plant early, whether it's starting stuff inside the house or starting stuff in the garden. I'll plant my seeds a little bit on the early side. That way I know if my seed is viable or not, and then they germinate. And if for some reason it doesn't germinate, I've got enough time where I can reseed and replant. And I've done that both with my trays here in the house and with stuff out in the garden. There's been times when I've had cucumbers and beans that the seed never came up, so then I had to reseed with a different type or whatnot. And I had enough time to do that because I planted everything early. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind if you're starting a garden for this this type of thing. I've already mentioned hand tools, and I kind of want to mention a couple other things that I keep around kind of for gardening and for prepping related things. And these are two of those things. It's masonry sand and pea stone. Masonry sand is just a clean sand that they use when they make cement. And you can use this for drainage. You can use it for, if you got a real clay soil, you can mix a little sand into it, and that will help loosen the soil up. But you can also use it for primitive water filtration. And the same thing with pea stone. You can get pea stone and masonry sand very cheap. You can show up at the cement place with a couple of 5-gallon pails. Tell them you want a 5-gallon pail of masonry sand and a 5-gallon pail of pea stone. They're going to maybe charge you $1 a piece for them, but the stuff is very handy. Like the pea stone, you can put this in pots, you can put this in containers for drainage, and I'm actually going to use this when I make my strawberry tile bed here a little bit later in the spring. I'm going to fill the bottom of those tiles full of pea stone. So I got good drainage, but you can also use these two items for primitive water filtration. So just a couple things to keep around. Like I said, it's only a couple of 5-gallon pails. I just keep them outside. I put a board over top of it and put a cement block on top so they don't fill up with water, and they stay nice and dry just like it is right here. So if I'm ready to use it, I can just grab it. But just a couple of the items that I keep around here. I'm going to show you a few other things as well. This right here is another improvised gardening, I guess, item that I make. And what it is just a milk jug. You can use milk jugs or water jugs, whatever you have. And you're going to take a utility knife or scissors, and you're going to cut the bottom off of it. Then, when you transplant your plants out into the garden, you just cover them up with these milk jugs. And basically, you're going to make a little mini greenhouse out of it. Those milk jug hot caps that I showed you outside there, this is what I do with them when I store them in the off season. All I do is take a strap or a piece of twine and you tie one on it, and you just kind of put them on like so. As you can see, all you do is hang them up in a corner somewhere, and you got kind of yourselves a improvised way to get your vegetables in the garden a little bit sooner. And this is kind of what I use so I can get my tender vegetables out in the garden at least 2 weeks earlier than anybody around me. I'll put out peppers, I'll put out tomato plants after I've kind of acclimatized them a little bit, setting them out in the day to kind of get used to the cooler temperatures. I'll plant them in the ground, and I'll put one of these improvised milk jug hot caps over top of them, and kind of put a little dirt up and around it, and I'll leave these hot caps on probably for at least 3 weeks. And I take the tops off of them, and they need water. I'll put a little water down the center, and like I said, it's just going to be a little mini greenhouse for them. And when they start to grow a little bit, I'll take the hot cap off then, and then they can just be out. By this time, it's going to be mid-end of May, and they'll be all right then. We're past the chance of frost usually by then. But this is just something you can do. It's just something that would normally be discarded anyway, to kind of protect your vegetables, and kind of use something that would normally be junk anyway, and you can use it to get your veggies out a little bit early. But anyway, just kind of want to show you this. This used to be kind of a real popular thing back when I was really young, but you don't see it too much anymore. But just kind of wanted to show you guys this. Here's one other thing that I kind of want to mention to everybody in my getting ready for my garden video that I'm doing here, is fertilizer. I don't know if it's something that other preppers keep, but I keep fertilizer in my preps, and being able to grow something is kind of high on my priority list of my preps. So I keep fertilizer around, and what I do is I just keep a kind of a basic organic fertilizer here, just a real mild fertilizer, and I keep this if I have to, kind of increase the amount of vegetables that I'm growing, or if something happens where I can't spend as much time in the garden as I'd like, I can use this to kind of make my garden more reliable. I usually wait till the fall of the year, usually late fall for me. In most places like garden stores or Walmart, they're going to try to get rid of this stuff for the season. So they usually clearance this stuff down pretty inexpensively, and then I'll scoop up a bunch of it and just kind of keep it with my outdoor preps, and that's kind of what I'm showing you here. And kind of another thing like fertilizer, sometimes you're going to plant plants, and if the soil's not just quite right, your plants are going to kind of look back at you and say, hey dude, what do you want me to do with this? So then I can give them a little bit of boost with something like this. And A lot of this stuff is real fine, real easy to work into the soil, so I can just kind of surgically put this directly around the plants that I want to grow. I don't have to broadcast this in a very large area. Like, I don't have to go out and throw this over my entire garden. I can just take a little bit and I can work it right in at the base of the vegetables that I want to get the nutrients. So this stuff actually lasts quite a while. A bag of this, I use maybe a bag of this a season. So that's kind of one of the things that I prep. Like I said, I don't know if it's something that most preppers think about, is keeping fertilizer in their preps, but if you keep seeds, I think you should keep some kind of organic fertilizer like this just to boost your soil in case something bad happens. But I also, of course, I also work in organic stuff. I work in wood ashes and stuff too. I should mention, I work in hardwood ashes. That's all I burn in my wood stove is hardwood. If you burn a lot of softwood, you're not going to want to put that on your garden. But if you're burning hardwood, those ashes are actually fertilizer, especially for root vegetables. So you can work that in too. But anyway, it's just something I kind of wanted to mention. I don't hear a lot of people talking about fertilizer and prepping. So that's kind of why I brought this up here and kind of wanted to show you guys what I keep. Here's kind of the result of my bed that I started working on this morning. You can see here I got it kind of all leveled out and worked up. Kind of worked it a little bit with a rototiller, worked it a little bit by hand, kind of raked everything, got it level. Now this can just kind of sit and chillax for a couple of weeks here before I start getting everything into the ground. I'll probably turn it over once more by hand before I'm ready to plant in it. There's one other thing that I kind of wanted to bring up is raised beds. I haven't had a lot of luck with raised beds. I know a lot of people do have luck with raised beds, so I just kind of plant my stuff directly into the ground. And I think one of the problems that I have with raised beds where I'm at here is the late summer in August and September are usually pretty dry, and those raised beds dry out a lot quicker. At least my experience, I think those raised beds dry out a lot quicker than plants that are planted into the ground directly. So that's kind of why I just keep my stuff planted directly into the ground, and I don't do raised beds anymore. I just kind of feel that the plant can reach out its roots and look for water easier if it's not in that raised platform. So I just kind of keep everything low. Anyway, this is kind of what my first little garden bed here that I started on this morning looks like. Just kind of want to say thank you to everybody for watching my videos. If you got any questions, throw them down in the comments and I'll try to answer them as best I can. And thank you to everybody that came over from Alaska Preppers shout out. I appreciate each and every one of you guys, just trying to contribute to the prepping community by kind of from my point of view. So I hope you guys enjoy all this information. This is Modern Refugee. You guys have a great day.